Years ago, I walked into a meeting that our boss had called because, listen, our sales were not good. I was a sales leader. The region wasn't doing well. And he shouted through all kind of stats, all kind of key performance indicators. I mean, he was not a happy guy. His blood was boiling. And he says, does anybody have any ideas on how we can get this thing back on track? And one of my colleagues spoke up with what I thought was a pretty thoughtful suggestion. And our boss leaned over the table and said, that's why your results suck, John. Oh my gosh. The room goes silent. Nobody said another word. Nobody all of a sudden had any good ideas to share with the room. And just like that, the chance of any collaboration happening in that meeting was gone. Have you ever seen feedback like that mishandled? Maybe you've done it and you didn't even realize it. But sometimes it can be mishandled so badly that it will shut down entire conversations and collaboration will come to a dead stop. And that moment taught me something very, very powerful. It taught me that in today's fragile world, feedback is either the fuel that moves a team forward or it's the spark that will burn trust completely to the ground.
This is the Champion Forum podcast with Jeff Hancher, the forum for leaders, champions, and dreamers.
Take control of your career at Compassionate Care Unlimited in Canonsburg.
Compassionate Care Unlimited is hiring RNs and LPNs. Choose your own schedule for a perfect work-life balance.
Plus, enjoy competitive pay and 24/7 personal support from their woman, nurse, and veteran-owned business.
Enhance your skills with their CPR training classes for individuals and businesses. Learn more at CompassionateCarePA.us.
Be uplifted, be supported, be part of the Compassionate Care Unlimited team and apply today.
Compassionate Care Unlimited is an equal opportunity employer.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I hope that was an intro that got you a little bit intrigued. I can remember that meeting like it was yesterday. And boy, you can learn a lot from some bosses that make some bad decisions. Let's make sure that as we continue to take in this content, that we're not one of those bosses, that we can learn from the mistakes of others to execute and make big impact. Hey, we're talking today about the difference between knowing about feedback and applying feedback. You see, knowing something, it doesn't really guarantee us anything about executing on what we know. You know, I always say on this show, we're not here to learn, be good at leadership trivia night. You know, we're not here to be able to tell people how to lead well. We're actually here to become great leaders. And knowing what to do and actually doing it can be miles apart. You know, you could read golf magazines and golf books all day long. You can watch golf YouTube videos all day long. That's not going to make you a great golfer. There has to be some application. There has to be some activity. If you've read my book, Firm Feedback in a Fragile World, you know feedback is the backbone of leadership. Think about it. We're all either a product of the feedback that we've been given or the feedback that's been missing from our life. That is who you are today. That is who the people are that you lead. But here's the truth. Reading about feedback, that's one thing. And look, hats off. We need to consume content. But practicing it with your team, day in, day out, that's where culture shifts start to happen. That's where real momentum starts to shift. And that's what I want to unpack today in this episode. Let's talk about this and let's be very transparent with one another here today. Feedback feels more fragile than ever, which is exactly why I wrote the book. It's hard. There's a lot going on. Leaders are afraid of fallout. Fallout happens when you give firm feedback sometimes. Employees are nervous about how they're going to be perceived. So maybe they're not saying what they need to do. Leaders hold back. Why? Because they don't want to be the bad guy. Hey, I want to be liked. I don't want people to not like me as a leader. And then you have the leader that overcompensates and bulldozes people into the ground with kind of harsh words and sarcasm and all the other things. Listen, we see the gauntlet of different types of fragility in the leadership world that we're in today. And we're all challenged with it. No matter how long you've been in leadership and how confident you are in leading, it can get fragile at times. The result, when not doing this well and not having a great feedback culture, at best it's disengagement, quiet quitting. You've heard the term, right? Teams that don't trust their leaders. And I know if you're listening to this, that's not you, because you're amazing. You're an amazing leader. You listen to the Champion Forum podcast every week. You're aiming to be a better leader, to make more impact. But here's the thing. Sometimes we have these blind spots, and we learn content, but we don't really learn how to execute content. This is where the tension is, right? Think about it. The stats are out there. They stack up. I talk about them in the book. I talk about them in my workshops. I talk about them in our executive coaching sessions, in our mastermind. But check this out. Nearly 7 out of 10 managers admit they are uncomfortable giving feedback. Wow. Yet 75% of employees say that they want more of it. There's a gap there. That's a gaping opportunity. And that gap is costing organizations billions in productivity, not to mention how leaders are letting people down by not giving them the feedback that they need to grow and advance and make big impact themselves. Think about this, 7 out of 10. That means if the statistics are true, 7 out of 10 people that are listening to this episode right now are saying, I'm uncomfortable giving feedback. Now, look, if you listen to the Champion Forum podcast, we're probably bending the curve here because y'all are superstars. But wherever you fall in that, it may resonate with you. So what's the solution? That's what we really have to think about. The first thing is self-awareness. We diagnose the problem. Once we diagnose the problem, then we got to go look for solution. Leaders need to learn how to give the right type of feedback in the right moment. I lay this framework out pretty well in the book. If you haven't read the book, hit pause, go read the book, come back to this episode. But I think about the framework that I talk about in the book. I talk about 3 very distinct types of feedback that every leader needs. And I begin taking us on this journey of directive feedback. When you're thinking directive feedback, we're thinking people or the situation demands clarity that's going to count in the moment. Because sometimes you don't have the luxury of discussion and collaboration and a vote and all these things. I mean, look, safety issues, critical customer deadlines, customer issues. Sometimes these moments in time, decisive things, they require crystal clear direction. In the book, I reference Villanova coach Jay Wright in the 2016 NCAA championship. If you haven't watched that game, go back, YouTube it. It's amazing. 4 seconds left. They take a timeout. He did not open the floor to ideas. Hey, guys, what do you think we should do? Hey, guys, what play do you think we should run? Hey, who do you think should shoot the ball? None of that. He called the play. There's 4 seconds left on the clock. There's a timeout. Now is the time for direct feedback. Now is the time to be decisive. He called the play, and this wasn't a new play. This was one that they practiced over and over and over and over. Hey, if there's ever 4 seconds left on the clock, this is the play. Run it. Run it again. Run it again. Run it again. He calls the play that they had practiced. And you know how the story ends, right? They win the title. The confetti cannons are shooting off all over the arena. What a great ending. What a great story. In business, sometimes you're going to need that same kind of clarity as a leader. How about that new employee? That new employee is hungry for direct feedback. Can you imagine the new employee walking into orientation and the boss says, so what would you like to do today? What? I have no clue. I was actually hoping you would tell me. And this is something that's a gross example, obviously. But these new employees, they need direction. I can't tell you how many companies I go into and I look at their year one turnover, because year one turnover is a big KPI that I look at. And usually if I have high year one turnover, I've got one of two problems or both. I got a hiring problem or I got an onboarding problem. And then when I start dissecting this onboarding problem, what I'm finding out is when I'm looking at these exit interviews, these employees were set up to fail. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't feel well equipped to do the job that they were hired to do. What were they lacking? They were lacking direct feedback. But then we have collaborative feedback. And collaborative feedback, we look at collaborative feedback as building bridges, not walls. You know, very, very different than directive. Different approach, different audience. Collaborative feedback is critical with high performers. I remember having a boss one time who, instead of honoring my trophies, my tenure, all of my years of service, in one of our initial meetings told me flat out, none of this matters to me. You're going to have to prove yourself to me starting today. Whoa, slow down. Slow down. Look, I'm not saying that I need a red carpet rolled out for me, but man, can you take at least into consideration all of the hard work, sacrifice, and dedication that I've put in over the last X amount of years? I'm going to tell you this. That aggressive approach almost pushed me out of the company. I was highly contemplating rolling out of there. Collaborative feedback, that would have been appropriate at the time, because collaborative feedback flips the whole script around when you're dealing with a peak performer or a high tenured employee. Because collaborative is about asking questions. It's about listening when people respond to questions and creating solutions based off of this collaboration and this dialogue that you're having with this person. When leaders do this, employees stay engaged, especially the peak performers. And they even bring their best ideas to the table. Because you want a defensive employee, show me a leader that's directive in feedback to a peak performer, high tenure, and I will show you a culture of defensive employees. But then we have the third one, which is supportive growth. And this is, if I'm boiling this down to what is supportive growth, it's encouragement in tough times. That's what supportive feedback is. It's encouragement in tough times. Sometimes we need to be supportive. And I know there's leaders listening today that's like, that's not me, Hanch. I'm not kumbaya. I'm not fluffy. Look, we all have problems. Get over it. When you show up, do your job. I'll pay you on Friday. You're welcome. I get it. I get it. I get it. But I will tell you this. Sometimes you get more bees with honey. Not every employee who struggles needs reprimanded. Some need support. Some need support. Some need you to walk through the valley with them. I had a salesperson once that was, I would say, an above average performer. I'm not going to say a peak performer. They were above average performer. And man, they two months in a row, they missed their sales quota. And I'm ready to, I got the PIP, the performance improvement plan. I got that thing crafted and ready to deliver. And I'm delivering it, and I'm telling them, hey, this is the action that you need to take. These are things that you need to do to get out of the valley, get out of the slump. And I said, do you have any questions? Do you understand? And this guy looks up at me. I could see the emotion in his eyes, nothing that I expected. And he said, listen, I know I haven't been myself lately, and my results, they're clearly not where they need to be. But Jeff, I got to tell you, my wife has been diagnosed with a brain tumor. Oh my gosh. The first thing that I'm thinking is this poor family. He's got young children. His wife has a brain tumor. As I began to reflect on this in the days to come, I'm asking myself, why didn't he tell me this? And you know what light bulb went off for me? I never asked. I never asked. You know, we can pass blame sometimes by saying, why wouldn't you tell me? You know, great leaders ask great questions. And in that moment, I said, you know what? I'm sorry about your wife's brain tumor, but the standard's the standard. So get back there and start making phone calls or you're going to get fired. Of course not. What am I, some kind of psychopath? Like, no. We're not. We're never here to be right. I would have been right in doing that. The standard's the standard. Get it done. Make it happen. No. This was a good employee. This was an above average employee. This was somebody that was typically a culture fit and a hard worker and all of these things. That was not the time for policy, for punishment. It wasn't the time. It was the time to listen. It was the time to encourage. It was the time to give this guy the confidence and the space to try to find any level of footing that he could get. Supportive feedback says, I see you. I believe in you. Let's find a way forward together. Think about it like a police officer. You're going 85 in a 55, and they pull you over, and they ask you the series of questions, don't they? You know how fast you were going? Where are you going in such a hurry? Imagine if they asked that second question and you said, my son's in the back seat having a major surgery. I was on my way to the emergency room. Does the police officer say, hey, listen, the law is the law. Sorry about your son, but wait right here while I go get you a speeding ticket? No. They say, look, how fast are you comfortable driving? Because I got lights, I got a siren, and I am not afraid to use them. Follow me to the emergency room. Let's do this. We're not here to be right. Sometimes you got to be supportive. Sometimes you got to be directive. Sometimes you got to collaborate, right? Can you imagine Kobe Bryant going into a shooting slump and he comes off the court and Coach Phil says, Kobe, listen, let me tell you about the shooting pocket. And let me tell you that your elbow needs to be closer to your body. And I need better follow through and let your hand come up over the top. That's how you shoot a basketball, Kobe. Can you imagine this directive feedback to Kobe Bryant? By the way, number 3 all-time scorer. Oh, by the way, some of y'all might not even know this. He holds the record, number 1 in the ranking for most missed shots in NBA history. But is that what Coach Phil does when Kobe's in a shooting slump? Can you even imagine the Black Mamba, somebody teaching him how to shoot a ball, teaching him the fundamentals of how to shoot a basketball? He probably would have popped Coach Phil right in the mouth and said, I'm going to another city. I'm taking my talents to South Beach. What? Not Kobe Bryant? No. You know what Coach Phil would tell the Black Mamba when he's in a shooting slump? You know what he would tell him. Hey, man, I believe in you. You're a winner. You've won so many games for us. Look at all the rings on your finger. Listen, don't worry about the missed shots. Keep shooting the ball. Keep shooting the ball. That's a way to collaborate. That's a way to show support. But look, sometimes you got to be like Coach Jay Wright and say, now's not the time. Now's the time to call the play. So check this out. Here's my question for you. Which of these do you default to? Which of these styles do you default to? And which does your people on your team need most from you right now? Look across your team right now. Look at that person and look at that person and ask yourself, what do they need from me right now? It's so important to understand that when you begin this journey to becoming a feedback expert, to first understand, one, there's different types of feedback, which I just explained 3 of many. But then we also have to understand they all have a specific use for a very specific person at a very specific time. If you've ever been to the ocean and you watch these people fishing on the pier, I mean, I've seen people roll out on the pier with tackle boxes that have wheels. I'm talking eight trays of fishing lures and worms and you name it. You ever wonder why they take so many different types of bait and lures and all of this stuff? I'll tell you why. Because there's a lot of fish in the ocean and they all like to eat different things. I've never seen a fisherman put a Snickers bar on a hook. Why? Well, because most fish don't eat Snickers bars. They eat worms. Here's the play here. We don't feed people what we like. We feed people what they like to eat. And that can be ebbing and flowing from one person to the next. And look, the Brad that you get at 8 a.m. may be different at 4 p.m. I know it's maddening, right? But guess what? Welcome to leadership, because at the end of the day, when you said yes to leadership, you have just thrust yourself into the people business right here. That's what we're doing. So we got to understand there's types of feedback and there's uses for that feedback. So here's the call to action. To become an expert at anything, and feedback needs to be one that you become an expert in if you're going to be a leader. Here's what it takes. It takes practice. It takes application. There's research on this, meaning we can't hope our way. We can't read this book, Firm Feedback in a Fragile World, 50 times in a row and think we're going to be a feedback expert. I think you're well on your way. I think you have the head knowledge. And by the way, it starts with head knowledge. I'm here for it. But here's what we know. People remember 10% of what they read. Isn't that scary? 20% of what they hear. 50% of what they see and hear, but up to 90% of what they do and then teach to other people. They retain up to 90% of what they do, apply, learn, practice, role play, and then teach to other people, employee, subordinate. That's exactly why we have put a lot of heart, a lot of dedication, and a lot of time into creating our digital companion curriculum, video and curriculum for the book Firm Feedback in a Fragile World. And here's how that works. You put your leadership team into the conference room or on the Zoom or whatever it might be, the virtual call. You and your team watch a short video from me. I break down the key concept of each and every one of the 12 chapters in the book. Then you use a guided discussion, questions that are there so that we can start to apply your specific real-world challenges, the ones that are in your company, the ones that your leaders are having. And then finally, what happens is you hold each other accountable to put it into action. Now we go from just reading a book to making it part of our leadership culture. It's not just information. It's transformation that we're looking for. This is designed to help you and your team build leadership muscle memory so that we're not reacting to things, we're responding to things with these feedback techniques that I write about in the book so that they become a natural part of your leadership culture. And if you want your team to stop avoiding feedback and start thriving because of it, then this video and curriculum series is for you. Feedback is the backbone of leadership. Your team, they don't just need it. We know, statistically speaking, that people are craving feedback. The only question is, will you be able to deliver it with the courage and the skill that people deserve? You can grab the book. It's anywhere books are sold. And if you're ready to take it a little bit further, check out the video curriculum at jeffhancher.com/products. jeffhancher.com/products. Appreciate you all tuning in today. I hope this challenged you to go a little bit deeper. It challenged you to really understand, what does it take to become an expert? When you're an expert at giving feedback and you're an expert at leadership impact, guess what? Not only is it good for business, you can literally transform a life. But what if you get off of this episode and you decide, not for me? What will be the cost of that? Appreciate you all tuning in. Remember, firm feedback in a fragile world isn't about being harsh. It's not about being mean. It's about being courageous enough to lead people to become their very best. Until next time, keep providing feedback in a way that transforms the people around you, and keep turning that pressure into potential.
The Champion Forum podcast with Jeff Hancher. Lead, inspire, win.